Hi, everyone. For my final discussion and reflection, I want to walk through how this course has shaped my understanding of love, justice, equity, and inclusion, and where I see my multicultural competence growing from here. So, when I look back at the essay on reflecting on self understanding of LJEI, I can see a very clear shift in my understanding in the way I treat my students now. Looking back on the essay, I used to treat my perception on LJEI based on relationships and how we can be more inclusive with relationships and the relationships we build with students. For example, focusing on fairness, compassion, being compassionate, being fair, and making space for students to feel safe. This course deepened that understanding for me. I now see love as creating environments where students feel safe, valued, and seen. Justice is no longer just about fairness, it's about understanding the structures and histories attached to those inequities. Equity isn't automatic, in my opinion. It requires intentional adjustments, targeted approach, and targeted support. Inclusion moves beyond everyone is welcome to examining how institutional norms either create belonging or push people to the margins. That is, when I hear equity, and it's a word that's thrown around a lot, uh, it needs to go beyond the respect all people and we all belong. It needs to go beyond that. It needs to go into allowing for other cultures and ideas and thoughts to coincide with what we have now, especially in the education section. I think that we have a lot of students that come from different diverse learning backgrounds and approaches, and we need to embrace those approaches and understand where we can make improvements and emphasize their learning. Because at the end of the day, we're here for them. It's not so much for us. Another big piece of learning for me has been reflecting on my own social identities. As a Hispanic male working in higher education, I've experienced both privilege and marginalization. This class helped me look more at honesty and how identities shape the way I advise students and how I interact with students as well, and how I interpret their experiences. So, because we all come from different backgrounds and experiences and ideas, I take myself out of that. I'm not necessarily trying to relate my own experiences to a student's experience, but I'm more empathetic towards someone's condition. So I get students that come from a great household, great education, and I also get students from the other spectrum where they come from a broken household and a broken education system that has failed them in the past. Knowing this, I am now able to focus on the factors that contribute to their negative experiences in education and how to mitigate those experiences through LJEI, or even just being more empathetic and understanding their circumstances. I'm leaving this course with a deeper understanding and awareness of the invisible labor that students carry, especially those minority students, and how their cultural background, race, and socioeconomic status experience affects their learning. That to me is really important because we often attribute academic growth and success on measurements. So, take a test, take a writing prompt, take an assignment, and measure the growth that way. But it's really important to think that understanding their circumstances, where they come from, and how they perceive and how they understand and how they learn goes beyond a test. A lot of this growth happens without any measurements. And that's really important to me because it opens the door to more trial and error and attempts to make sure that students get the best support possible. But it also becomes creative. It gives me an understanding that there is no one way to education. There are multiple ways. There's thousands of ways where you can create education moments and learning. So this course has definitely pushed me to think that way. It has pushed me to realize that justice, equity, and inclusion goes beyond the phrase and the simple words. It goes into understanding that we need to take a deep look into how we educate, but also the norms that are institutionalized in a lot of universities or schools or any sector where education is taking place. Even with all this growth that I have had in this course, I still have lingering questions that I wrestle with. And one of those questions, how do I advocate for equity in systems that change very slowly? How do I take that first step to raise awareness or to contribute more to progress? In my own circumstance, I can attribute this to different things that I've noticed in the education sector. As we all know, artificial intelligence is making a big splash in the education field, and the advocacy to either promote or contribute to student learning is becoming a larger gap now, I believe, just because of AI. Getting students to engage and be focused on the current events that are happening or current learning that is happening has become harder because of that. So that's a question that I wrestle with. It's how do you begin to contest certain norms or certain procedures that inevitably will either harm a student or make their education better. The second idea I wrestle with is how do you support students without diving into being a savior? Early in my teaching career, when I was in K-12, the principal at the time told me that you can't save them all. And that's one thing that stuck with me the whole time, because I was teaching in a marginalized community where students oftentimes come from a lower income household and therefore have bigger struggles and more challenges. And when the principal told me this, I reflected and said, well, I can try. But the reality is that the reality that I learned the hard way is that you can't save them all. But you have to provide the opportunity to all students to equally grow and have that at least the opportunity to make that change. But understanding that now is that when working with students now, I oftentimes slip into that area of wanting to save students and really trying to make the best of it as I can, which inherently isn't bad, but at the same time, you are a lot of times holding the student's hand to get stuff done. And it's always a give and take situation where I don't know if I'm doing too much or if I'm not doing enough in terms of working with students and getting them to grow and learn and be supported and successful. So that's another idea that I wrestle with is how do you support without getting to that point? What is the best approach? What is the best way to do it without getting too deep into it where you are feeling like you have to save the student? And then what is the third question I have is what does LJEI mean now with the current political spectrum, with the current situation that we're going through, especially at the University of Arizona, for example, with the compact and the mandates to eliminate all DEI efforts. What does this look like now? What is the best approach now? Where do we start? How do we advocate for more equity, for more support when mandates are happening? The political spectrum is heavy. So how does one take that approach now? To keep learning, I want to engage more deeply with scholars, like the authors that we read throughout this course, Sean Harper, Estella Benenson, and the CC model. That was huge for me. Tanya Mitchell's work with critical service learning. I want to explore resources from the National Center for Institutional Diversity, watch Race Forward videos, and attend professional spaces like the NASPA, Equity Leadership Institute, or ACPA conventions, because I need to not only grow in the area of my own career, but I also want to grow where the theories make sense, where there's been research already done on these approaches, on these events, and how this really promotes growth for students. I'm definitely deeply interested in is how race has an impact on education. That's huge for me. Going beyond the normal factors that we normally attribute to race and education, I want to learn how do you support that growth for a student who may have been marginalized throughout their academic career. That's what I really want to learn moving forward. I see this as a long-term plan, not something that ends with this course. I definitely want to take a step forward and make a commitment to educate myself more on these topics and become more aware, and also promote certain topics that I know can improve a student's learning. Finally, I know I'm going to need support to stay committed to love, justice, and equity, and inclusion. I need mentors who understand the realities of the institutional politics. I need colleagues who care about this work and who are willing to discuss challenges honestly. I need reflective spaces like book clubs, affinity groups, or personal development communities where I can process what I'm learning and stay grounded. And I need a broader community to keep me accountable so I don't fall back into comfort and complacency. I need this to happen for my own personal growth. I need to find these communities for myself. I need to keep myself educated on these topics. And I also need to put more effort into reading, researching, applying this in my own career, expanding on those ideas in order to see what fits for me and what doesn't. Overall, this course really helped me into a much more fuller understanding of LJEI, not as a checklist or as a set of values, but as a way of operating in higher education. I remember at the beginning of this class, I one of the questions was, what do you think of LJEI and what do you attribute to it, or how do you identify it? And I remember it was more, to me in the beginning, it was more of a slogan that was an inclusivity group and just support for all and respect all. And the idea that I had then was, why aren't we doing that regardless, right? Why do we need to label it this way? Why do we need these words and these researches to be happening for us to respect each other? But understanding how institutional inequities happen, we need advocacy, we need the research, we need these groups to develop and support and definitely have evidence of what gaps we have in learning because of race, because of inequity, because of justice. So now my understanding has changed, and now I see the value in having these groups and having this approach, because it starts with evidence. Thank you.